right, so this is air handler for this.
This is air handler for master bedroom. Now I'm gonna run a static pressure test on all these just to see what the duct capacity is for the tonnage. This is a 3.5 ton variable speed air handler, so I need to, before I do that, I need to check and see what it's actually producing and just make sure everything matches up. This is because I hadn't looked at this one yet too, so we want to match what you've currently got, which is a media.
So this whole air handler comes out as part of the deal, right? So the carrier, the thing outside, connects. They work together.
Yeah, correct. You have to replace the whole thing in order for it to be a rated match. You really can't even. Did you even know you had this?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Jesse looked at it, you know, the last time he was here 5 months ago and said, you know, look, you'll need to get a new filter at some point, but...
It's dripping again already, so this one probably got some... I just said GOTS. It probably has issues as well. This one's got issues, man.
Well, this is the one we were going to try to nurse, but...
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I mean, when we were going to only do the 4-ton, right?
Oh, right.
So now we're doing everything.
All good to go.
So all this duct stuff, does it get redone, or how does it work?
You can't. I mean, so duct work is between the floor. You're not going to do.
But I mean, this piece
Right,
and all
correct.
this.
We're going to redo all of this and do it properly. I mean, you see the joints here are really loose. I mean, like, look at that. The joints are really loose.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. We have to use fab and mastic to coat now. They just use silver tape. You know, they cut holes in it and did silver tape and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we're gonna. So first off, the first thing I do is just make sure that, because I can't see the entire duct system, I run a test on this system to see how the duct system is performing with the existing equipment.
Okay.
And then if I see any major problems with how it's performing, then I kind of stop and see what can be done. But again, since this isn't a first floor, we don't have a whole lot in the way of options, and that's when we start ripping out ceilings and stuff. So you got to be practiced. There we go. All right. This is a nice, easy little camera to use. I like this. I need one of these things. All right. So here's what we're looking at here. The interesting thing about this unit, this is the main air conditioner for Matt's house, is that it's upside down, which is what we call a downflow application. And so that's one of many interesting things. It's just set on an uninsulated metal box. And you can see this uninsulated metal box is not really designed to bear the weight of this air handler. You can see it's bowing. And I'm not talking about the jet. The other thing is we're leaking air all over the place in this box. I mean, I can feel, when I put my hand here, I mean, we're leaking massive amounts of air into the floor structure, and I don't really know why we are. I'm not sure the full reason. I think this duct is damaged, actually. So we're gonna need to essentially just gut this closet. What they did, the reason why they set it upside down is because it serves the downstairs, and so they've got the return here. They've got one return for the upstairs, and then they've got another return coming off the side. You can kind of hear this thing howling, so airflow is clearly not the best. What I'm going to convince Matt to do, which he doesn't know this yet, is we've got this whole sidewall here that we can put a gigantic grill on. We can leave this vent here. I'm pointing and you can't see. We can leave this vent here, but we need to probably add a return here, because then that way we can put in a large size. This duct here, you see this is a zone damper. Wow, that thing's hot. This is a zone damper, and what this zone damper is for Matt's porch. So if you look here, it says supply, or S/A, which is supply air outside. Well, he's got a duct with a damper on it that's going to an outside porch that is not insulated. The only thing that closes it is curtains. So that's gonna go bye-bye. This whole assembly is gonna get removed. This is crazy town. So we're getting rid of all of that. And then we're gonna, this, you can see this return box here. It's on the base. I mean, the whole thing is just moves all over the place. So that's all gonna come out and get redone properly. So we got a lot of different considerations. We gotta figure out, do we keep it downflow? Do we keep it blowing down into the floor assembly? Or do we set it right side up and then just kind of reduct everything that we're doing here? So I've got to figure that out, and a few other things. So I'm going to shut this off for now while I actually work on this. All right, so I did some measurements and looked around the space, and we're really just stuck with this downflow application. I don't love it, but this is what we're going to have to do. So I need to figure out about making this a little more structural, and I also need to insulate this. This is going down into the floor trusses, so I can't, obviously I'm limited with what I can do, but we're just going to have to build something more structural to hold this unit up properly, and also you know, actually get it level and anchored down so it doesn't shake all over the place. After kind of reconsidering, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with the return. We're definitely going to add more up here some way, but we're going to go into this wall somewhere, but obviously we may put it a little higher, and we don't want to result in a giant hole in the wall that we don't need to have there. So I'm going to work out what that looks like. But the main thing is we're going to, once we tear all this out, we're going to look at cutting the subfloor back, because we have to also look at this duct here and see why we're pouring air out of here. Just air is just pouring out of there. So we got to figure that out. So it looks like somebody just kind of foamed it up in hopes of sealing whatever was going on. So all that's going to come out. This big supplier is going to come out, which will give us a little more space to work, and then we'll probably end up cutting the floor back a little bit in here to give us space and to see what we've got, and then obviously we'll have to put that all back when we're done. One thing that's kind of entertaining here is somebody, come on, focus camera. Somebody kinked this liquid line fitting, and it looks like they just tried to like round it out with a set of something, pliers or something, so that's a little, that's obviously going to have to go. We're dealing with an application where we're not going to be able to, and I know some people will dispute this, but there's no real easy way to replace the line set, so instead we're just going to do a really good job testing it and then flush it out really good in order to make sure there's nothing in the lines. We do use a product called ProFlush in order to flush out the lines. I know that's somewhat disputed in the industry right now, but trust me, when we're done flowing nitrogen and doing everything we're supposed to do, there will be nothing in these lines when we're done. So that's what we're looking at for now. I was kind of hoping that we would have, so this is the other side of this wall, I was hoping that there would be an additional cavity over here, like a closet or something I could work with, but there's no, this is a bathroom, and so I can't come over into this wall. I've really got no options. Again, because we're dealing with a floor system that I can't get into, we just have to work with what we've got and make it awesome. Which the good news is that it will be way better than it is right now when it's all said and done, both because the equipment is going to be much higher efficiency and it's going to be better installed, but also we're going to deal with some of these inefficiencies that we've got going on. I mean, just the fact that we've got a motor here that is constantly energized in order to drive it closed, I can tell, because it's just flaming hot to the touch. So that right there is 24 hours a day wasted energy that we're going to remove, which, I mean, it's not huge, but it's enough. So now we're going into the attic. I'm also going to, just so you're aware, we're going to check all the ductwork and everything as well. I'm not going to document every bit of that, but this is what we've got. This is the system that does a lot of the upstairs, as you can see here. So we've got two line sets here. This is the line set from the big unit that we were looking at that goes down here with the drains and everything, down inside a plumbing wall and then into a chase and then outside. So all of these connections are going to be redone, everything. The supply, the return, everything's going to be redone here. So it'll be nice and clean and fresh when we're done. We're going to put in some new drain pans, and I actually may reuse these stands. They've got some nice little stands here, and this is a nice solid base. I mean, unlike a lot of attic applications, you would normally have a big pain in the rear just getting access to it. So this actually isn't too bad. This will be nice to work on. One thing that I found interesting is that they, instead of having disconnects, they actually have gigantic plugs, which is not what you normally see, but is fine. I mean, that is technically a disconnect. We need to neaten all this up. You see the float switch there just got pulled out, and it's not even in the drain pan, so it's not going to do us much good. Obviously, we'll deal with those kind of obvious things. One thing that I find entertaining, and I need to look at how this is laid out outside, but we got traps right at the air handlers, but then no vent after the trap. So that's not, you know, anytime you trap right at an air handler, you want to vent it afterwards in case there's another trap. You want to bring it up higher than the level of the drain pan, and so you'd have your trap your clean out, and then a vent that would go, you know, maybe that high. So we'll of course do all that correctly, and then over here, I'm not sure if Matt and Michelle like me showing all their attic junk. One nice thing is we just don't have a lot of space trouble, which is, you know, 90% of quoting systems appropriately in residences is making sure that you have space to fit what you've what you've got. So here we actually have access, you know, pretty good access to the ducts too. You can see we got this gigantic 180-degree bend. This unit we're actually replacing with the ductless. So this unit we're just going to completely demo because we don't need it anymore. We're going to put, this is a little unit that actually has a leaking evaporator coil, and we're going to replace this with just a ductless unit in the media room. So right now I'm actually standing over the media room. This is actually the catwalk, or whatever you want to call it, the attic that connects over the porte-cochere. All right, so I'm going outside now. I just warned Matt that if he edits this to make me look like a jerk again, that I'm not going to be his friend. Because I'm not a jerk, I just look like a jerk, that's all it is. All right, so we're going to walk around and look at the condensing units. Now these are heat pump systems. So heat pump systems either remove heat from the inside in cooling mode, or they remove heat from the outside and reject it inside when it's in heating mode. These are actually already pretty, you know, they're decent systems. These are 14 SEER train systems, but they're at the end of their usable lives, and they're starting to spring leaks in the evaporator coils, and so that's why we're looking at replacing them now. And so we, you know, Matt decided to go ahead and do them all at once, and drains and copper actually come right out this wall, which means that where you see them go down into the floor, they must go into a plumbing wall, and then they come down the inside of this exterior wall and then come out, which is why replacing the copper would be, I mean, it's not impossible, but it would be ugly, and there's not going to be any pretty way of doing that, which is why we're going to just instead pressure test and then flush the copper. And obviously if we find any that are leaking at all, either under nitrogen pressure, at high nitrogen pressure, or under a micron vacuum, then we would be forced to replace them. But again, it's not going to be pretty if you have to do that, especially in a nice custom home like this. So what I'm looking at here is just looking at the pads, you know, because, you know, the pads are kind of buried here. The systems I'm going to be putting in are very small footprint. The VNA8 is a carrier system that has a variable speed rotary scroll, and because of that they're very efficient even at a very small footprint, so you'll see how small they are. These systems here are actually pretty quiet as it is, but the new systems will be way quieter. And you can see here this is a 4-ton, you know that because it says 048 on the model number, and so you divide that by 12,000 BTUs per ton is how we calculate that. So we call that a 4-ton system. And then this here is a 2-ton system because it's 24 divided by 12,000 BTUs, and you can see the manufacturer date on these is 2005, so we're about 11 and a half years old, and that's when, you know, you start to think about replacing them when you have major issues, which a couple of these systems do. A couple of them have leaking evaporator coils. One thing that you'll see here is they have the line dryers on the outside. These are liquid line filter dryers. I don't put liquid line dryers on the outside, I put them on the inside because that way they protect the indoor metering device, which is what they're designed to protect, especially with this long of a line set. We're going to flush everything and get anything that's in there out, but just in case, you know, heaven forbid there is anything in the lines, we're going to cut these out and put new liquid line dryers on the inside of the system. These systems are already 410A, so that makes it a lot nicer from the standpoint of any leftover oil that could be in the lines. 410A systems is what people call Puron. They use an oil called polyol ester oil, POE oil, and the fact that these are already 410A mean that we run less of a risk of there being any sort of moisture, any sort of oil contamination, oil mixing. So pads are good. We're just gonna have to unbury them, you know, do a little bit of digging, but we got decent pads here that we can anchor to for hurricane. Proper hurricane strapping will be easy to do in these cases. I always just look around to see if there's any environmental conditions that I'm concerned about. So here we have a vent, but that's up high enough and far enough away that it's not really a concern. I always look for any possible dryer vents or something that could be discharging right in the condenser, and I don't see anything. You want to make sure that the disconnects are easily accessible. So if we were to set a new unit and the disconnect were right behind it, then that would be a concern. And both of these disconnects are nice and accessible. Getting the condensers in here is going to be a little tricky. We'll have to trim these bushes back in order to get the old ones out and the new ones in, but that's no huge deal. We do not have a convenience outlet as close as I would like it, but I'm going to look into this box and I'm going to see if that's what this was designed to be, and we can always install a convenience outlet there if that's what that is, which my guess would be that probably is what it is. You notice that the drains aren't trapped out here, and the reason why they're not trapped is because they're already trapped inside. But you do want to vent. When you trap inside, you want to vent after the trap just in case there's any double trapping in the drains, to ensure that you have good drainage. You can also tell here that somebody has been putting bleach in the drains. That's a pretty common practice, and you can see that because of the white around. I don't recommend using bleach in drains, and the main reason is because in this case it's no big deal, but in a lot of cases that water can drip on the copper, and when the water drips on the copper, then that can cause corrosion if there's chlorine in that water. I don't love the piping configuration here, so I don't really like how this is just kind of flying through the air. So we're going to see if there's a way we can neaten this up. We're going to be pretty limited with how much neatness we can do here with the way it's configured, but we're gonna do what we can to neaten that up and at least straighten up if nothing else, we're not gonna have this wavy, crazy pipe. It'll be straight and neat. So, oh, another thing is when we install, we don't use these types of elbows you see here. And the reason for it is because every time you braze on a line set, you run the risk of adding carbon to the lines. Now we flow nitrogen when we braze, which, you know, with that practice that eliminates that, but 99% of HVAC contractors don't flow nitrogen, and so for every additional braze joint they make, they're adding carbon into the lines. And so instead we use a bender to make all the bends we possibly can instead of adding additional joints, because it's just in another place it can leak, and it's another place that you can potentially add carbon. Super windy out here. All right, so this is the place that we are, instead of using what we currently have here, we're going to replace this with a ductless system. So there's some debate about whether or not we'll put the ductless system here or whether or not we'll fit it in this zone over here, somewhere behind this bush. So we'll need to kind of make that decision. I think either way it doesn't really matter, because we could run it down this outside wall and then bury it. The actual copper line height is going to be a little bit of a challenge on this room because we have all of this goofy stuff all over the place. So we're going to have to figure out exactly how we run the line height, but we'll figure out something good, something neat. So this is you look here. That's the secondary drain for the existing unit, and that's another thing. I just don't, if you don't have to have a unit in the attic, I don't like to have it in the attic for reasons of water leakage, condensate drainage. So this is the big water heater, which we are going to replace with a bigger water heater. So you got a great big water heater here, but we're going to put in an 80-gallon heat pump water heater, or a hybrid water heater is what they call it. So it's actually going to even be taller because there's essentially an air conditioner on the top. It does require a drain, but that's going to be no problem to install. We'll have to do a little bit of repiping to make it fit in, but that will be no biggie. We got lots and lots of space in this room, which is really nice. The one issue that Matt brought up is that this wall, you can actually see this is the copper going up into the attic for the existing system. This wall had no insulation in it. You can see they actually just shut off the vent going to this system, which is another reason. You know, this room will be partially cooled by this hybrid water heater. Hybrid water heaters actually produce some cooling effect, but in a room that's really not properly set up, not properly insulated, you don't want to be pumping air into it. It'll cause, you know, it's a waste in power. Whereas with the hybrid water heater, what it does is it actually absorbs. So if you see this water heater here, the hybrid water heater is going to have this, essentially an air conditioner on the top of it. And what it does is it absorbs heat out of this room and then puts it in the water. This is a great room because any cooling effect that you have isn't wasted. It keeps this room a little cooler, which is nice because it's storing stuff and you don't want it to be mildewy. And then it drains that condensation outside, so it helps dehumidify and cool this room. But then also this room, it will be warmer than other rooms, and so that will actually increase the efficiency of the water heater. So there'll be a good amount of heat in here for the water heater to take and remove and put into the water. So it's really a kind of a perfect situation from that standpoint. So that'll be a piece of cake. All right, so I'm in the theater room or media room, or whatever you want to call it. What we're going to do in here is a ductless system, and that's going to be great for a couple reasons. First of all, by keeping all of the air in the room and not cycling it out, you're not going to have the waste. of communicating air into the attic above this that isn't conditioned. And so these ducts, while they may stay, we're going to block them off. I don't know if Matt's going to want us to pull them down or just block them off, but one way or another, they're not going to be doing anything anymore. And instead, we're going to place an air handler on one of these areas. And my opinion would probably be here, maybe over the window, but we have to think about how we want to route everything. So we've got a drain that we have to drain out, but then we also have copper that we have to run. So we can run the copper overhead and then through the mechanical room. So basically we just take the copper and run it upwards with a line cover and then go out. That's not the best because then you have this little elbow. It's not quite as pretty. If you go straight out the wall, that's better, but then the question is, how's that going to look on the outside? Are we going to put the condenser out on this side, or are we going to put it back where it was before? So I'm going to have to talk to Matt about that, figure out what he cares more about, the aesthetics of having an elbow with the copper going up, or the aesthetics of the outside where we position the condenser and how we run the copper. So those are questions for him, but the basic install is very simple in a ductless because we don't have to run all of the wiring and piping for the ductless comes from the outside unit. We don't have to run a separate circuit. We already have a circuit going to the condensing unit that exists currently, so we're just going to use that circuit. In addition to that, the unit itself is like crazy efficient. I think the specs on this carrier ductless 12,000 BTU unit we're using is like 23 or 24 SEER. So this is going to be a huge energy savings for Matt. Plus he's going to get amazing temperature and humidity control in this room. All right, so now I'm going around the back. I guess it's not the back, it's around the right side. Alright, so we got another 2-ton here, which again I already knew the tonnage, but I'm just showing you. And this is what we got here as far as a line set. Now on this one we've got a chase. So that may be something interesting to pursue, is once we get that whole platform open, is it possible to rerun the copper? Because if it is, I like to rerun copper if possible. See here we got a convenience outlet. We've got nice space for our disconnect, and man, this one's a little noisy. The new unit is going to be so much quieter. It's going to be a beautiful thing. But you can see here, we actually do have a trap in this location because we don't have a trap at the air handler. So that is done correctly. It looks like when they initially set up this house, they must have been intending to maybe bring the water main in this side or something, because you have a couple abandoned pipes here. So I'm not exactly sure what the plan was there, but that's what that's got to be about. All right, so this is a test that I'm going to do on all of the split systems that I'm replacing, and this is a simple way of doing this. This is called a MagnaHelic. It can also be done with a digital manometer, and what this measures is static pressure, airflow static pressure in inches of water column. So you see it goes anywhere from 0 all the way up to 1 inch of water column, and if we bury the needle at 1 inch, that's when we know that we got a major issue. And I'm just going to do the return of the supply one at a time, just so it kind of helps me diagnose which is which. Okay, so I'm measuring now on just the return side of this system, and we are running at 0.32 static, right in there, which for just the return is high, especially since I'm reading on the outside. If I wanted to measure total external static, I would have to measure on the input side of the filter, which means that we've got high return static. So now I'm going to switch this over. This out. I'm not even using a pitot, or not a pitot tube, a static pressure tube, which would give me even a better indication. But you can see here we've got ourselves some pretty decent static pressure, and I'm reading right after the blower, which is why it fluctuates a little bit. We got a variable speed system, so our total external static, even without the filter, or even on the other side of the filter, is in the 0.6 range, which isn't terrible, but isn't great. So we're going to look for any ways that we can increase airflow to this system. And you can see the return, and actually the return and the supply are actually both pretty close. So We're not going to be able to probably do a whole lot about giving ourselves more supply, but we can give ourselves probably find a way to get a little more return, and by doing that, that will help the system a little bit. All right, let's talk about where we're going to put this ductless condenser. So, have you ever seen a ductless condenser before?
Yeah, there's that little square, little rectangle looking thing.
Right, right. So it's like a, you know, it's not like a big square, tall condenser like you normally see. They're squatty. So they said about that, you know,
Well, you want it close to, like, we don't want it on the other side of the...
Well, that's what I'm going to ask you. So
right.
We've got to run a line cover down the wall if we want to pop out here. So the easiest, the aesthetically best looking place to put the air handler would be right on the opposite side of this.
Yeah.
But now we got to run a line cover down, and we can run it down in the corner there, and it can be painted any color you want to paint it. You just have your painter who's going to paint the inside of your house do that too. And then we can either place the condenser there, or we can bury the lines and then run them around the corner and then place the condenser where the other air handler. Right, where the other condenser currently is, which would probably be aesthetically the best looking way to do it. It's just, you know, you lose a little bit of efficiency running lines longer. So it's just a touch of a trade-off between aesthetics, you know, that condenser being back here or being over there.
Right. I deal with this part of the house much less than I do this. So for efficiency and just me not having to see it, I'd almost rather have it right there.
Okay, it's just, you know, coming up the driveway, people will, I mean, again, you could plant a bush or let the bushes grow up or something. Right. Culligan man's here. So you don't want it over there then.
I don't.
So then all we've got to do, the only downside of that is now we got to demo this. And so we're gonna, you know, you're still gonna have some of this copper stubbed out of the wall. We'll cut it back as flush as we can.
Right.
So that's still gonna be there. And then we gotta run our, you know, our electrical from here over there, which is fine.
Oh. So why don't we just put it here?
Well, that's fine, that's what I'm saying, but because of efficiency. You know, you don't want to run copper longer than you need to run it for no reason.
Right.
I mean, again, we do it every day. You know, the copper in your existing house is going to be 75 feet in some places, you know. But
yeah, I mean, I guess then it makes sense to put it here because they're going to have this here anyway. We already have power.
Right. Okay. So it's going to go here. Done.
Cool. Because what happens when the force pulls you back, your foot naturally comes off the gas. You have to keep your foot to the floor.